The science on climate is overwhelming. I used to meet a lot of climate deniers 8-10 years ago. Now I meet relatively few, and I think we have won the argument based on science. If we don't address CO2, we're going to change the climate with serious social, economic and health problems. We're using far more of the world's resources than we should be, and that will have to be addressed. We're going to have less impact. So in construction, we have to use more recycled materials, we have to use more sustainable materials, we have to use more timber.
We will build. Build back better, build back greener, build back faster.
What we're trying to achieve from an economic point of view is a circular economy. So you use something at one end and it then becomes a waste product and just goes back into the environment, rather than drawing something out of the environment, using a huge amount of energy into turning it into something useful and then creating a waste product. So wood is definitely part of a circular economy approach to construction, because the trees grow naturally, they absorb carbon while they're growing, and then they hold that carbon and store it while they're in the building, and then when the building's finished, that carbon can go back into the soil. So really that's how things were for most of our history, and the creation of buildings through brick and through steel and glass is a much more energy intensive way of building. So I think there's a really important role for timber in construction in a sustainable society.
People really want to make a contribution to resisting the destruction of our planet. And I think one of the ways that they can do that is be enthusiastic about the use of timber in buildings. So we just have to be very clear about its performance values. Obviously fire being a key one, but we can do that. And timber has a huge part to play in sustainability. So I think the use of timber in buildings can only increase. Especially as we are now thinking very seriously about our own resilience as the UK and the potential for using more of our homegrown product.
Well, our definition, or my definition of mass timber, is an engineered timber product, so glulam, or a cross-laminated timber, CLT, or an LVL, laminated veneer lumber. So these are highly engineered, using glue and engineered timber for structural purposes. It's been around a long time. It's not, everyone keeps talking about it as a new technology. I mean, it's new in comparison to steel and concrete, but it's not that new. And there's lots of examples around the world that we can learn from, in Australia, in America, in Scandinavia, in Central Europe. And we just need to learn from them and pick up their learnings and take that forward. So I think the opportunities are widespread.
Well, as you know, government have done the Future Homes Standard, so they've already set some milestones, and we as a business have sort of supported that, I suppose, by saying, well, look, we're going to go with that, and by 2030 we'll be looking to be zero carbon with our new homes. To do that as a major business, we know the challenge that come with actually delivering that successfully, and the key for us is we're pulling together a roadmap. We're quite lucky because, as you're aware, we've already built a zero carbon site, Hannam Hall, and we've built a zero carbon home, the greenhouse at the BRE. So we've got some, good experiences of how you meet the challenges of delivering zero carbon. But we're still talking about delivering anywhere between sort of 12 to 18,000 homes in the future to be net zero carbon. I suppose probably the most important thing is we've purchased a timber frame company. So I think our strategy is pretty clear.
The government last year made what I think was a really significant announcement, which was 5 key government departments have now been instructed that when they're actually commissioning construction works, they have to have what's called a presumption in favour of MMC. Now, it doesn't mean they actually have to use modern methods of construction. It means that they have to first look at modern methods of construction, and they then have to put forward a definitive argument as to why they can't use it. So it's a sort of opt-out rather than an opt-in. And to be fair, the Department for Education are very keen on this. They they see significant standardisation in MMC. They obviously build something like 200 new schools a year get built, and so we are seeing this sort of trickle down from central government to the departments, and then from the departments to the suppliers. And so I think that over the next 2 or 3 years we will see a really significant growth in MMC. At the end of the day, if you're using steel framed MMC, or indeed precast concrete planks, which are still MMC, then we're sort of forgetting about the embodied carbon. So from an RLB perspective, if we're looking at the holistic project, if we're looking not just at how you build it but how you use it, indeed how you might even take it down eventually, then clearly timber has a massive role to play in this.
I mean, the reality of it is we need a number of options, and I think we need more homes, therefore we will rely on all the technologies, but you know, there's no doubt under MMC, timber frame has got a long history in this industry, which gives people confidence.
I think the future is bright. I don't think we're going to be building all of our buildings out of mass timber. I think we have to be realistic about that. But I think we're going to, you'll be cycling to work one day or cycling through parts of London and the UK, and you're going to see lots of mass timber buildings going up. And I think also getting younger people involved is quite important as well, because we find that they are just as interested in this as the current generation. And the more we teach them, they can take that enthusiasm on and hopefully we'll be in a lot better position in 10 years' time in terms of our learnings and best practice.
I've seen buildings across Europe which use timber and are meeting the sort of performance levels that we're looking for our net zero journey. So I'm absolutely confident that timber's part of that journey. We just need to be doing more of it in this country, and sooner.
We have to use more timber. We have to find ways of proving it's safe to address concerns on the part of the insurers. But you know, construction is a big industry in the UK. It should be possible.
Well, I can understand why people might be concerned about wood being a combustible material, because we're just not used to living in wooden buildings in this country. But obviously plenty of other societies mainly have wooden buildings. You can think about Scandinavian countries and also the US, and there isn't an insurance problem there. And actually the biggest threat to insurance values is coming from climate change and the really serious and extreme weather events that we're having now, which are much more likely to create problems for the insurance industry than, you know, the very unusual event of a wooden building catching fire.
But increasingly the argument that there are financial risks in being unsustainable, which is what people like me and many other colleagues in the sector have spent years making that case to the insurance companies and to the pension funds, we've won that argument. They now recognise it. The regulators recognise it. So we've got large investors asking their fund managers for increased sustainability, and we've got the regulators changing the rules to force it, to force consideration of these issues. The insurers recognise the investment risks in their portfolios, in things like coal, in things like oil, and they're seeking to mitigate those. The interesting bit is what they do in their main business streams. Do they offer lower premiums to industries and to companies which are behaving more sustainably because there's less chance of those companies being sued? And we're beginning, I think, to see that kind of thinking in how they underwrite, in the insurance products they offer. But it's very early days, and there's more the insurers could do there. But I think that will be the trend we see going forward, is the sustainability thinking coming through to how they actually do the business of insurance as opposed to the business of investment. And that is where I think the construction industry, there are opportunities for it. If it shifts to a more sustainable model, I think over time the insurers will recognise that, and hopefully financial benefits will flow.
So when I first got involved in construction at Gallagher, we so happened to be involved in insuring what I think is still the largest CLT residential structure in Europe. And it opened my and our collective eyes, I think, to this market. We as a team, as a division, have realised that we need to be doing the right thing. This is only a growth market. It is the right thing to do, but also a huge opportunity, if done correctly. And the world, there really only seems to be one way to take on the huge challenges set by the government around carbon neutrality by 2050 in the built environment. And the only obvious solution right now is timber, in terms of carbon credentials. So unless I've totally missed something, it seems to be the only answer right now. and therefore something that we have to understand, we have to embrace, we have to make work. Otherwise, we'll get nowhere near those targets. There's no other material out there.